Hi, I'm your host, Kenichi Haynie, and this entire season, I Am Abel Foundation, and that's I Am ABEL Foundation, member of Foxglove Alliance, is devoted to amplifying the voice and presence of Black men in medicine, as Black men represent only 2% of all practicing physicians today. Our hope is to inspire the next wave of capable Black men as physicians that are so urgently needed in the medical field today. We want to give real-world examples of amazing people fighting on the front lines to make this lofty goal possible. And today, I am joined by Dr. Lamenta Sweetie Conway,
Hi.
Deputy Chief of Medicine for the Illinois Department of Corrections. Dr. Conway is an experienced physician and administrator with demonstrated history of working in the nonprofit, hospital, and healthcare industries. She is a strong healthcare is a strong healthcare services professional with a Doctor of Medicine from Rush Medical College of Rush University Medical Center, and a Master's in Public Health and Epidemiology and Biostatistics from the University of Illinois in Chicago. All right. As if that wasn't enough, she is also the founder and executive director of the growing and highly impactful I Am Abel Foundation, which is a pipeline mentoring program that helps inner-city Chicago area youth navigate careers in medicine. She created this foundation from the ground up, now that includes over 100 plus physician mentors with collaborations from major academic centers and community organizations locally and worldwide.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Dr. Conway, for being here with me. I understand that you're an extremely busy woman in constant demand. But before we begin, I want to personally thank you, for the role that you played in helping me, a Black male, reach his childhood dream of going to medical school.
Yes.
I remember the first email I sent Dr. Conway. I was begging to be admitted into her Urban Bridges medical mentoring program. I had completely missed the deadline. It was already underway, but you took a chance on me, and I appreciate you wholly. I was able to utilize my skills and tips that we learned, that you taught us, to not only get in, but excel in my first year of medical school at University of Illinois College of Medicine. So yes.
And my hat's off to you, because you actually did it. And
absolutely.
That's because at the end of the day, we try to, help hold your hands on a pathway, but at the end of the day, you guys are the one that actually do it. So hats off to you, Kenichi. Seriously.
Thank you. It's definitely a team effort, for sure.
Yes.
But enough about me. So let's talk about you. So how are you doing today, Dr. Conway?
I am doing all right. I'm blessed. I feel I am encouraged. There's so many, Kenichi, there's just so many positive things going on. Okay. I know that we've got a long way to go, which is evidence when we look at the pandemic and the impact on, Black and brown communities. It's clear that we have a ton more to do. Absolutely. But I still remain very encouraged that it's actually happening. People are seeing the need, they're understanding the mission, and they're showing up. Absolutely. And I'm thankful for that.
Yes, awesome. And I know we briefly talked about an intro, and that was a little formal, but tell us, who really is Dr. Conway? Who is Lamenta? Who is Sweetie?
Sweetie Conway. I'm a little Black girl on the inside. Way far deep down, but it's in there. That grew up. I still feel like Sweetie Conway, to be honest. So I think that we carry so much of our history with us.
Absolutely.
It's the reason why I'm here today in the first place. So I grew up in the Inglewood community of Chicago, and I'll tell everyone, you have to see it to be it.
Absolutely.
And I was a kid, as you know, and we reconnected after you saw the movie Black Men, the documentary Black Men in White Coats, and I had the opportunity to share a lot of my story in that movie. But one thing that I shared in that movie, and by the way, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking out. It's a very powerful documentary about the absence and the disappearance of Black men in medicine. But I got a chance to share my story as a pipeline creator, and still, share my story growing up in the Inglewood community. I wanted to be a doctor, but I had never seen a doctor. I had, in fact, never been to a doctor. Wow. First time I actually, saw a medical doctor was when I was 16 years old. Wow. And, I always tell people that a lot of my inspiration for medicine came from watching the TV show. You guys had like Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
They had ER. They have all sorts of
so
stuff.
many.
Yeah, but at that time, I just had this little white man by the name of Marcus Welby.
Oh, wow.
And y'all ain't even heard of him. And the only people that know anything about him is people that was around when I was around. So Marcus Welby, MD, and he's this little adorable white man that used to walk around, such a big heart. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that connected.
Oh, wow.
And he used to carry his little black bag, and he used to go to people's houses and deliver care, door to door.
Yeah.
Like they used to do back then. And I remember looking at him saying, I could do that.
Oh, wow.
And that's how it started off for me. But it was a very convoluted, difficult pathway because, I was growing up in Chicago area schools or Chicago area schools that were under-resourced, particularly at that time. We have a lot of selective enrollment schools,
Yes.
We didn't have that back then. We didn't have a Whitney Young and, Gwendolyn Brooks and Walter Payton. That did not exist.
Yeah.
And so growing up in the community schools and wanting to be a doctor and not really having, the type of exposure, the early exposure that a lot of kids have and need, I didn't have. And that's my early story, of growing up in the hood. And what God would just really make to be so is I would meet a mentor or mentors later. After I'd already graduated from college and pretty much resigned that I wasn't going to be a doctor, had already given up by then. And then, mentors came in and saved the day.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of my early story. And I ended up starting at Rush Medical College really because of several, like 4 pillars. I call them, the pillars. They really were, because 4 pillars at that point anyway, because, you have mentors along the way. Right. But those people at Rush at that particular time were the most powerful advocates. And I actually started medical school with 3 children under the age of 3. I had a 3-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 2-month-old baby day 1 of medical school.
Wow.
And I graduated in 4 years.
Okay.
And I did really well.
Okay. Kudos.
And but it's just a testimony and a testament to the support that I had along
Absolutely.
the way. Family support, the village, the community. My degree belongs to my mother, my family, and the people that made it possible for that little black girl, Sweetie, to be able to go to medical school a little bit later in life and still excel.
Yeah,
so
absolutely
deferred but not denied.
Absolutely, that's amazing. That's amazing. Talking about getting into or being inspired to get into medicine, I think our stories are a little bit, but definitely kind of a lot bit different.
Sure.
So I was raised in an environment where I was exposed to black male physicians and black doctors. My mother's OBGYN, the person who birthed me, actually was a black male.
Yeah.
And I had a pediatrician, and he was also a black male.
Wow.
And
so to me, that's like gold.
It's gold, and I had no idea until I dipped my big toe into the medical field to see really, all that's really going on behind this.
And then I'm sure when you got to medical school, you saw that even though you had this representation because your parents were able to provide that for you, you still got to medical school and saw that you were still in class by yourself.
For sure. I had assumed, actually because of disparities and because of the things that we confront in every area of our life, that we would be the minority, the few, less represented than we deserve to be. But, the fact that we represent 13% of the population and only 4% of physicians, and, half of that, less than half of that is black males.
Amen.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It's staggering.
Absolutely. But the fact that, it wasn't necessarily like a black physician for you. You're inspired by just the act of medicine, that need to care for others.
And to that point, I'm glad that you shared that because, people talk about a lot about the black tax, and I'll tell you what I say about that. If you got a tax, pay it. I get a little tired of people talking about the black tax. I know it's hard, but come on now.
Absolutely.
It's not that many of us, so we really have to stand up and do a little bit more. It's a tax, and we don't like it. But to that point, to those who are not Black, but they are true allies. Yeah. We want them to know that, because there is not a big, huge presence of Black physicians, right. Latino physicians, we are thankful for those who understand the fact that we need that help. And if you have the position, you have the resources, and you recognize the problem, and you want to be a part of the solution, that's important. Absolutely. So we celebrate everyone that comes to the table to create change.
Absolutely. And I know you talked about it briefly, but access. Yes. That's definitely a huge buzzword in the conversation. It's something that, we struggle with as a people. Yes. Access to resources, access to guidance, access to encouragement, access to the best educational institutions, for sure. Access in general, But what's so amazing is your organization, I Am Abel, which provides so much access to these students.
Thank God.
Yeah. Absolutely. So thank you again, but can you talk a little bit more about why providing that access to these students means so much?
It's important. And when we talk about the topic of Black men in medicine and the absence of Black men in medicine, and I just want to throw out there, this is a stat that I think people are becoming more familiar with, but in 1978, there were more Black men who applied to medical school than it was in 2014. Wow. So as we say, sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. Yes. So when you speak about access, I think about the story of I Am Abel Foundation. And when you talk about Black men and why it's so important, is because you remember back in the day. No, you don't remember back in the day, but you heard about back in the day, though.
Teach me something.
And I think even before my time, the pillars of Black communities were your pastors, your teachers, your doctors, your dentists, and there were all Black communities that had that. Right. I think things began to change and shift maybe when I was a kid. So I actually grew up in a community where there weren't those things within the community. Right. Back when my mother grew up, they were there. And I feel like the reason why that is so important is evidence when we're looking at what's going on in the communities today. Why do you need Black doctors? Not just because you need and why do you need Black men doctors or male doctors? Not just because you need them, to do the medicine. You can train a lot of people to do medicine. Absolutely. And you can maybe even, have women that are culturally sensitive, that can address some of the needs of the Black community. But one of the things that I think that people don't talk about is the importance of the Black family. Yes. The importance of strong Black leaders in the community, and that is how you change the narrative from the inside out. Why do you need Black men? Because men, there's roles that men play, there's roles that women play, and we need to see Black men in a very powerful and positive, powerful and positive position in the community. Because I think that is, key to helping to change the community. Sure. And Black men. I can't be a Black man, but I can support a Black man and help him to find his place. I can't maybe help these grown ones, but I can work with the young ones. And I could only be a mother, but I can still point the way. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important is, also one's position in society. I think that's important.
For sure. And talking about that narrative so often in media, that is not the narrative that's played about, especially about Black men.
It isn't.
It's not a positive one. It's a portrayal of.
It is, and there's some real problems that we have. One of the reasons why I started I Am Abel Foundation was really the murder of my cousin, 15-year-old, to Southside gun violence in Chicago on Mother's Day. Had my son not come back, it was around the time of Trayvon Martin, and had he not come back to the house to pick up his license because he didn't want to be caught driving while Black, and he was on his way back to school to Purdue. He's like 28 now, right? But this was back, when he was in college, and he was driving. He was going to drop the little kids off that were visiting from my house that are part of our family at their home on the South Side. And he forgot his license. And at the time it took for him to drive all the way back, pick up his license, and head back to the South Side. We lived out at the time in the Oak Park River Forest area. I would hear within 5 minutes of them arriving screams, crying, indistinguishable sounds, because their cousin, all of them, my son and the other kids in the car, their cousin had been murdered in front of the house on Mother's Day. And they literally missed the shooting within days. And one of the reasons why I Am Abel Foundation was started was because I thought about one of my little cousins that was there. He was 14. I was super close to him. And he had called me all weekend. Like, I want to come over, Auntie Sweetie. He's my cousin. He calls me Auntie Sweetie, right? And I want to come over. And I was busy studying for boards. And all that hit me was, you got to answer the call. Sometimes there is a spiritual, metaphorical call that has to be answered. And I didn't, because I was studying for boards. And I knew that I needed to pass them because I just accepted a new job. Wow. And of course, I didn't see what was ahead. He witnessed this, and in order not to be retaliated against, he came to live with us after. It was a life-changing moment. But what made me really start the foundation is when I missed that opportunity to not have him exposed to this experience. Right. So I took him in after the fact. He was a strong recruit for football, doing great in school. He went back to his community near the Inglewood community. I think it's like Washington Park area. And 6 months to the day, he was also shot and paralyzed. And when I walked into what was called Weiler's Children's Hospital, now Comer's Children's Hospital at University of Chicago, and he reached out to me with the only hand that worked, and he said, Auntie. And I walked over there. That was the beginning of I Am Abel Foundation. When I realized that somehow I'm missing something. Like, I always thought that I would be the sister girl, auntie style doctor. You could always come to me, and you as a black woman especially, and black kids, you would feel comfortable. But then I realized there's a piece missing. I've got work to do. Wow. And that was kind of like, as Oprah would describe it, the aha moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
So and these are black men.
Absolutely. So tragic, but it's a lot of people's story that
live
here.
It is a lot of people's
especially
stories.
On the south and west sides of Chicago.
Yes.
But I think it's amazing that you answered that call. Yeah. Because
I had to.
99 people out of 100 are happy, like putting their heads down, grinding, or looking away, or not saying or standing up and doing anything.
Right.
But you are that 1 out of 100. And the things that you are doing for this organization, for black men, for young black physicians, for people who even aspire to want to do amazing things, like, you provide access and an avenue to do that, and that is so amazing.
Well, I truly believe, Kenichi, that it's unacceptable, it's unconscionable to be blessed and not pass it on. We have a responsibility. Absolutely. And even though it may be hard, and we think about those who were, in the biblical story of the blessings and only one coming back to say thank you, that's what I don't want. I want us to remember to be thankful for the things that we've been blessed with and make sure we pass it on. Right.
Absolutely. And touching on your organization, can you talk a little bit about the ABEL, ABEL? Because I remember when I first heard it, it's, like, I am able. Like, we can all do it, but there's more to it, right?
There's more to it, because what really happened with this youngster that survived but ended up paralyzed is that we began talking about the reasons that kids in his community, him even, who was maybe on the outskirts of things that were maybe not the best behavior, and we talked a lot about that. And one of the things he shared with me was how he used the word ops, and you'll hear it in you'll hear it in video games, you'll hear it in radio. And I said, ops? Who's an ops? And then he started talking about people. I said, people are ops? How did that happen?
Opposition,
Yeah, and then he said, oh, Auntie, that's the opposition. He explained to me, and I said, wow. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that a lot of our young people don't understand that their brother is that they are responsible for their brother, that they are their brother's keeper. And that whole notion that would allow a young person not to recognize the beauty, the wholesomeness, the wholeness of another young person that they really don't have beef with, not true beef, right? And yet they create a beef because they're able to somehow distance themselves and depersonalize the young person. And I said, we've got to find a way to help young people recognize that this is their brother.
Absolutely.
And they are responsible for him.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of like, that's the thought behind I Am Abel. You're your brother's keeper, and you're qualified.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. That's amazing. Makes me feel jittery inside, But yeah, it's definitely a message that that young black men need. And so interesting, like I'm thankful to the organization.
Sure.
I'm working an internship at the JBVA here.
Jesse Brown VA.
Jesse Brown VA here on the Near West Side in the medical district. And I've been there for about a month, I want to say. And I can count on my hands the amount of black males that I've run into.
I'd like to speak to that. It's very interesting. I worked for a while. Now you know that I'm in a role over at the Illinois prison, but for a long time I was, at the VA.
Right.
And when I was at Hines VA, which I love the place. I still go back and I moonlight. But truthfully, there was only one black doctor in internal medicine, and that doctor was me. And in the department of the academic hospitalists, I should say. And when I left, there's none. And so I always say that is important.
How long ago was this?
That was now. That's now. And so, you talk about what I Am Abel Foundation about, and it is about raising the next generation of healthcare heroes. Not the kind of doctors that do what you describe, go into their garages and put the door down and then start all over again on repeat, but people who have a spirit of compassion, integrity, and this willingness to play the tax that it takes, to create meaningful change. We think about the pandemic, and we saw the excess death in the black community.
Yes.
We saw the threat of the closure of birthing units on the south side, where women would actually literally have to drive from the far south side all the way down to an academic center in active labor. But one thing that has been proven is that black folks specifically go back to the community from which they were born or similar in numbers higher than any other demographic.
Wow.
And for that reason, since we know that there's obviously not enough of the brain trust that we need within the community, and not enough people willing from other ethnicities or races to be in those communities, then we've got to prepare our own community. And that's why I'm thankful for all of the partners, Northwestern, Rush, Loyola, University of Illinois, Jesse Brown, that understands that there are serious social inequities, and that we've got to prepare people from the community, people that look like the people in the community, that can help tear down some of the walls, but also that can actually physically go back into the community and make a difference.
That's the most important part.
It's the most important part. And, we got to raise up people who can do this work. And that really is the mission of I Am Abel Foundation.
Yes.
And what started with about 30 kids with our first class has just ballooned to hundreds of kids that are in the pipeline program. All of them, many of them, most of them want to be doctors, but there are quite a few that maybe want to explore medicine and research, or some of them are in medicine for a while and then they're like, oh no, I think I might be interested in public health, and that's okay, because all of it is needed in the community.
Absolutely. Every piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and what I Am Abel Foundation seeks to do is to cover every piece of it. A very holistic organization. Our young people are partnered, one-to-one with their own physician mentor, their own medical student mentor, a mentee from within the program. We are always, trying to comfort, pray for our young people, whatever they need. We want to meet their needs. We have a big mentor-mentee community, meaning that we do a lot of fun stuff together. We do service projects together. We have big parties together, like our annual Hawaiian luau.
Wow.
That's usually at my house on an annual basis in the summer. And you have doctors from all over, our mentors, all over the city, mentees and their families. Again, creating community. Why? So that kids can feel like they fit in and know that they fit in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's so important because, we don't come from, generations of medical physicians in our family.
And that's key.
But, through this program, it's like we do.
Exactly. I always call it creating legacy by proxy.
For sure.
Because you've got to have, I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to share a very quick story of a young Indian guy that was one of my rotations. And it was in July. And he was like, hey, Dr. Conway, do you want me to pull up the CT scan and show all of the medical students what's, the findings. Yeah. And I said, sure, pull it up. He pulls it up, and he walks them through this CT scan as if he was a radiologist, right? Wow. I'm like, wow, this kid is pretty amazing. Yeah. So I pulled him aside, and I said, hey, how do you know how to read a CT scan like that? I said, you've been a doctor 1 week. Yeah. It was like July. Yeah. It's July. It's like the worst week on the planet. Right. And here he is. I'm on service. I'm like, God, somebody don't love me. I'm on service in July. But then here's this amazing kid. And he starts laughing when I said that. And he says, well, Dr. Conway, I've spent years with my uncle in the reading room. Wow. So how do you think he looked when he was, on the floors in medical school when he wanted to go into interventional radiology? For sure. He looked wonderful.
Already there.
And no one knows that he's not, he's smart, sure, yeah. But it's not just that.
Absolutely.
He's mentored and he's trained.
Absolutely.
It's legacy. And he didn't have the added concern of looking like he didn't belong. So he could walk through the hospital, head to the reading room, and not look like he don't belong there.
That's a heavy burden.
That's a heavy burden for our young black men. Black men can just walk in there and just open up the door and go back there and sit down and read. Mm-hmm. So these are some of the things that we have to work for, and that's why I'm so thankful. I forgot to mention University of Chicago, who runs our orthopedic program. There are so many people who care.
For sure.
And that's going to help us, fix this or address this problem, I should say.
Absolutely. And the last question I have, what would you say to the black men that may be listening, or that young black boy, as to, aspiring to have a shot at that not so impossible dream of becoming a physician? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say believe. Don't be afraid. Ask for help. Because I think, and don't think that it's so crazy an idea that it can't be done. I would try to encourage this kid to reach out. And that's the challenging part, Kenichi, because sometimes people reach out and there's not always anything there. But I think that to that point, young black men like yourself and others in our program, and even those that are not black, need to be willing to pay the tax, as I call it, and sometimes the black tax, which might feel a little bit more overwhelming, to reach out and extend a hand to these young people. Yes. So, I would say don't think that it can't be done. It might seem like a long shot, but, reach out to your own doctor. Ask them, is there any way that I can spend some time here with you? Because a lot of black kids, even in neighborhoods like I grew up, now see a few more black doctors. But even if it's not a black one, ask whoever's there. Take some risk.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Conway, and to everyone watching at home. This has been another episode of I Am Abel's Medicine Makers on Black Men in Medicine. I am your host, Kenichi Haynie, and it has been an absolute pleasure. Remember, you can find us on live on CanTV 21 or Channel 99, or you can stream us at home at cantv.org/hotline. We invite you to please share our live streaming link on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to info@I Am Abel. That's I-am. You see it there on the screen. abel.org. Thank you all and have a great night.
Have a great night.